everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are coming to you from the Johnson County Arts and Heritage Center, and we are with Tim Bair, and he is our Fine and Performing Arts Manager, as well as the Theater in the Park Artistic Director. And we also have Andrew Gustafson, who is the Johnson County Museum's Curator of Interpretation. And we're going to be talking about the Redlined Cities, Suburbs, and Segregation exhibition that is on display at the museum currently. So we'll just jump right in. Andrew, do you want to go ahead and start and maybe just give us a brief history on the brief lesson on the history of redlining in Johnson County?
Yeah, sure. So redlining, the definition is a system of disinvestment, and it was a private practice. It became a federal policy, and that system of disinvestment gave preference to some populations and neighborhoods over other populations and neighborhoods, and that was often on the basis of race. And so when we look at the Kansas City, Johnson County area, the disinvestment was in urban Kansas City. Neighborhoods were denied mortgage loans through the FHA, the government program to gain access to housing, and also through private banks. Investment came in the suburbs through the FHA and other private banks. And the FHA required racially restrictive covenants on properties, which prohibited the purchase or occupation of the home by African Americans and often other communities of color as well. And also there were, of course, discriminatory lending practices through the FHA. They preferred to work with new homes in the suburbs and with white families over communities of color. And so there was a massive inequity that was built through this program. And it hasn't really been fully deconstructed in our society today.
Yeah, thank you. So after we learned a little bit about redlining, can you kind of tell us how the museum exhibition came to be?
Yeah, so the museum has talked about redlining for a long time in our main exhibit at our old location, and then for the last 5 years here at the Johnson County Arts and Heritage Center. And so it's in our exhibit, it's in our tours, we've written blog work and social media posts and things around it. And our special exhibit gallery down in the museum space, the mission of that space is to really dive into topics more deeply and explore historical themes that are important to Johnson County's history. And I don't think we can think of a single piece of history that's more integral to understanding Johnson County as a suburb, as a post-war suburb, and as our community today than the history of redlining. And so I was project lead on this exhibit. So for about 1.5 years, I researched and wrote about a 85-page footnoted exhibit research paper. Came out of that research to help bring the rest of the curatorial committee up to speed on topics. And then we worked on transitioning that, editing it down into about a 40-page exhibit narrative, which is a lot of information. And we recognize that. And Tim, I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a minute, but the topic is so important and the history is so complex, so massive, that we got it to a point where we didn't feel we could cut it anymore without losing important parts of that history. And so we did some special things design-wise. We have it up for a full year, which is unusual for us as well, showing how important we think that history is. Lots of programming built around it and other resources and things available online. So that's how the exhibit came to be. Yeah.
Awesome. So Tim, can you tell us about your involvement with the exhibition and going off of what Andrew said, kind of the creative process behind it?
Sure. Our connection is interesting. When the COVID monster appeared, now so long ago it feels like, shortly after that, the museum decided to do a kind of a, I don't know, it feels unusual to me, but a very quick kind of response exhibit called Rising to the Challenge, which appears upstairs and has been up the entire time that we've all been living through COVID. And I think I volunteered, or I said I'd like to be involved in somehow to do it, and I think that was the birth of the kind of a creative relationship between the museum and me and JCPRD and Justin Border, who is also a graphic designer here in our building in the culture division. And from there, we went and did a small exhibit about quilts, some quilts that have been in the collection in the museum for a long time. And then I guess at some point, we just decided that we all liked each other and we could carry on working together because we started talking about the Redline exhibit. And gosh, it was a very long period of time. I think it was right around the time that Andrew was just really finishing up the first version, the first big hunk of information, really. And we had a meeting about it, and we just kind of dove into it and gave it some thought through some ideas, thought, how can we represent this information? And then we let that kind of ruminate for a little bit. We planted the seed, I think. And then, as Andrew said, the curatorial staff and he went through and decided, okay, what's the most important things that we need to share in this exhibit? And he's heard me say a long time, one of the first things I said was, okay, what's the story we're telling? And it was a little befuddling, I think, to really come to terms with what's the story we're telling, because it's a very large story. There's a lot of information. And I think it's interesting, there's not a lot of filler inside all of those 80 pages of stuff. It is all important. It all connects the dots. So my brain was, as the designer of this exhibit, how am I going to represent the information that Andrew's, researched, collected, and how are we going to make it? My challenge was, okay, this is a lot of words and we don't want it to be overwhelming. We want it to be engaging. We want something to be visually appealing about it. We want people to not be overwhelmed when you walk in. It's like, opening a telephone book, like, where do I start? How do I visually make it appealing so that people will be interested? And then through that kind of process too, we came to terms with, some people are going to want to read every word. They're going to be very interested in it, and they're really going to want to understand the detail. Other people are going to maybe not want to read all the detail or not all at once. So is there a way that we can also present that information visually, artistically, in a way that you could spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes in the gallery and walk away with a basic understanding of what just the concept of redlining was? I'll have to say that I'm actually embarrassed to say it, but I didn't understand redlining at all. And, through my life, how could I not have heard that before, or really have an understanding of it? So I was kind of a prime example of, okay, read all this information, digest this information, then try artistically, visually to represent it in a way that, again, wasn't overwhelming. So one of the things that I asked Andrew and Mary and the other curators of the museum was go through the script, and if you would, highlight important things to me. Inside of all of these words, if you had to pick things that were important, you want to make sure was really clear, highlight those for me. And so they did. And it was very interesting, the words that were pulled out of all of that script. I think if you see any of the marketing material now after the fact for the redlining exhibit, you'll notice that there are lots of words. There's a background of words behind everything. There's red, there's black, and there's words everywhere. I was from just a very basic kind of human standpoint, I was taken by, this might sound naive and I hope I can make it clear, but one person decided something, so they said some words and then it happened. I was taken by the words, like, wow, look at all these important words. And I said, let's try and see this plethora, this ocean of words. What kind of an image could we put in this exhibit in that way, really, and it's not in the, well, there are a lot of words in the exhibit, but from a visual standpoint, when you first walk up to the gallery, the entire glass at the front of the gallery are just lines of words. And all of those words are words that Andrew picked out of all of those words that he wrote, that he researched. And it's a background. It all sits on top of all of these words. And sometimes we've chosen in some marketing material to make them very small. And when you step back from it and you look at it, it feels like noise behind there. And I liked that artistic kind of feeling of that background, that noise, all of this stuff creating this crazy system that, you know, still in so many ways exists right now. So visually speaking, then if you go into the exhibit, you'll notice that there are some large words, there are some smaller words, there are words that are actually surrounded by a red box, a red line of those things. So we use those words and those topics to kind of pull out big titles, big sections of things, topics maybe, and then there are other words that fill in those blanks. If you walked through the exhibit and you looked at the big words and the words in the red box, you would have an understanding of what redlining means. It basically tells you the steps, the story of how it became what it was and how it affected people.
Yeah,
So
functions as an outline, which I think is really
yeah,
helpful. It
you're
was
right.
helpful to you, and then we realized it would be helpful to the general public.
Yeah, because I was trying to wrap my brain around it, having never understood it before, and then immediately translate that into something visual. So that was kind of my process in that way, really.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and Andrew may speak to this too, we have the good fortune of having art created by actual human beings for this exhibit based on, I believe, Andrew, you can really expand on this if you want to, but their feelings about this exhibit and what this exhibit means and the system of redlining too. So it's kind of infused actual art from, you know, an artistic sensibility inside the exhibit too, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we realized, well, this is a systematic thing. It's a system, it's federal policy, it's words on a page of paper, you know, and so it's this abstract kind of over your head, yet all encompassing thing. And so as you go through this story, we worked as hard as we could to include images of people and quotes from individuals and, you know, bring some humanity to the story, but it is often a story that loses sight of people. And so we reached out to the African American Artists Collective in Kansas City, Sunny Thompson Ruffin, to bring some artists in to create some artwork. And she gave them a charge of creating something roughly 12 by 12, and they could include up to 3 pieces of that size. So small scale, in what we've kind of called art nooks within this exhibit. And, you know, the main narrative is on the outside walls, and on the inside, we have some large scale visualizations, which I want to come back to. And these art nooks as a sort of visual chance to escape all those words on the walls and see some things that will interest your eye a little more once you get tired of reading, you know? And so within these art nooks, you have these pieces that, yes, are based on feelings that people had in response to redlining, and also experiences, you know, people's personal experiences. And so this art is very humanizing, it's very personal, and it's a chance to step away from this heavy history and interact through artwork with another human being. And communicate some of these things that are so hard to communicate in words sometimes, and yet art is able to do it without using any words at all. And some artists did include words, of course, but stepping into these art nooks, literally stepping into this space, removes you from the heaviness and the sort of barrage of words in the exhibit, and puts you in a more human moment. And it really feels like a different space when you're inside those little 3 little art nooks there. And I think it really did more than we even intended. You know, having that artwork there, I think, is really integral. Plus, this is a history that is, it was made by white businessmen and then white bureaucrats, and it didn't always include, the historical sources don't always include voices of color. And the communities who were being most impacted by this history were African Americans and other communities of color. And so it was one way among several others that we worked hard on to include voices from the communities who were impacted by these policies and this history.
The main gallery is a lot of red and black and gray and type, you know, print, fonts, letters, words. And inside these, they're kind of really like little micro galleries. It's really wonderful to just step into it. The walls are completely black and the art is hung and lit inside that. So it really does give you a moment. You just kind of step into quietness and you can just experience art standing there with all that other noise quiet.
Yeah. Andrew, you said you wanted to go back to the visualizations. Do you want to talk about what kind of things are on the walls?
Sure. I think this was an interesting way where Tim and I connected. So there's, of course, I'm a historian, my background's in history, and I've been in the museum field for 10 years now. And so I love history for history's sake. But sometimes some history is more important or is more important at the moment, you know? And so there were some amazing visualizations that go along with this exhibit, and also terrible. It is redlining maps, you know? I mean, it's defining futures for neighborhoods, and but they're really important to see. And so we were able to blow those up. And there's also moments, I'm thinking specifically of the list of neighborhoods that had racially restrictive covenants on them. It's a massive list. I don't know the total, but just an ongoing, you know, I don't know, 6 or 8 column list from floor to ceiling practically of neighborhoods that were not open to any communities of color. And to see it in that way as this large visualization, almost like a memorial wall in terms of the setup of it, you know, a black wall with white text with the neighborhoods and the year that that covenant was recorded, I think is really powerful, and it underscores the history that you're reading in there. You know, you come off of the section reading about, you know, and real estate developers included racially restrictive covenants, and the federal government through the FHA required them. And then you see this wall that's a partial list of the KC metro area. It's overwhelming. And then the text along with it asks you to think about this on a national scale. Every city that has a suburb around it has a similar list, you know? And so I think that's that one in particular is effective for me. And there's several others, headlines that we've blown up, you know, that came out during the time we researched and created this exhibit that show that redlining is not a dead topic. It is a continuing thing. And so I think it's history, sources, and information, but there's something really wonderful about the way they've been designed. It's almost artwork in itself.
Andrew loves history for history's sake, and I love production value for production value's sake. So it's history meets theater, really.
Love it.
You know, in the same world, there's another panel that I like very much. I think the name list wall is probably about, you know, it's probably 8 foot by 8 foot. So it's a gigantic place with letters, you know, lists and lists, like Andrew said. And then there's another panel down the way that is a graphic representation of the United States with little colored dots on it, every city that had redlining in it. And we were able to get maps of those specific cities. So we chose a few: East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, all that stuff, and then blow that city map up too, so they hover above the United States map, it's just remarkable that it was everywhere. It was practically ubiquitous, you know, like it's unbelievable how and to see the difference and to see the similarities and how cities were split up, and it's very interesting. And then there's another map of just the Kansas City area with redlining, a gigantic map of Kansas City, you know, there. And it's so interesting for me when I've been in the exhibit down in the gallery, when people are visiting, to see them standing and trying to see where they lived or where they live now, and to see what it was then. And it's very interesting. And I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, and my neighborhood is not on that map. It's just the tiniest little bit outside of the map there. But to see that I actually grew up in a redlined neighborhood as well, and didn't really even realize it, you know, didn't know anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the way that you guys did that, where you're talking about Johnson County or Kansas City, the Kansas City area specifically, but you also kind of put it on a national scale, which really gave perspective that yes, it is everywhere. It's not just in certain, you know, specific tiny locations. Tim, before we move on to the history part, sort of.
Mhm.
Do you have any more design favorites, design moments that are favorites besides, you talked about the maps and you talked about bringing out some of the words. Is there anything else that you really enjoyed translating by design?
I think at the time I probably wasn't enjoying it too much because I'll just say that it's a very long wall
Yeah.
because it is all the exterior walls of the whole gallery downstairs uh, actually turn into one giant long wall completely. It's completely covered in vinyl, printed vinyl that's stuck to the walls. And I look back at it now and first of all, if you ever need a hint about measuring a wall, get one of those electronic ones because they work really well. Don't rely on the 50-foot wind-up one because somewhere in the middle of that 50-foot long one, you lose a foot or you gain 6 inches, so we were just lucky that honestly, there were a couple of times we were like, oh, that's not going to quite fit. I'm pleased and proud for the final product of it. And I think it flows nicely together. I was trying to be very aware. It all started with me looking at a map of Kansas City and the way that the Missouri River winds and weaves. And I tried to kind of emulate that visually. If you go back down and look at it again, Allison, you can tell me if I was successful. But the way the photographs wind their way through the text to try to break the text up, to try to give a line of reading of something that leads you to the next thing, and I think we succeeded in doing that. It's 100 feet long from beginning to end almost. So, best laid plans, you think, okay, this is going to look great 100 feet later. And when you get to about 60 feet and it still looks good, that's pretty, I'm pleased. I'm pleased that it all worked that way.
Good. So Andrew, a little bit about kind of the history of the exhibition. Are there any other artifacts or visuals that are not on the walls besides the artwork? Like, are there any objects that you've put in the exhibition?
Yeah. So, I think at first when we were talking about this exhibit, we were like, oh my God, what are we going to have besides legal documents, paper documents in a display case,
Right.
very flat. And, what images are we going to have? And as it turns out, we have more than 140 images or graphics on the walls to help punctuate the story. And we do have, I think, 10 display cases down there. And so, yes, there are legal documents in there and other documents that are important. But I think one really interesting artifact is a Monopoly board. The game we all play using Atlantic City, New Jersey as the city of choice for some reason, right? And as it turns out, the man who made that board in the 1930s looked at his own community when he was adding the values to the street names. And that reflects the redlining that was happening in his community. So the most valuable places, the Park Avenue and others, are the green-lined areas where he and his friends lived, the most expensive areas of town. And the least expensive spaces on the board are the areas that were redlined, where the African-American community lived in Atlantic City. And you wouldn't know that if you didn't live in Atlantic City, but it's so ingrained in our society that it's part of a very popular board game. I think it's fascinating. And then there's some other great pieces down there too. Some catalogs from the 1950s that are a parade of homes catalogs showing, new floor plans and how the suburban lifestyle was being advertised. And there are some other interesting things too. We did some map comparisons on a touch screen. So comparing that 1939 redlining map that Tim talked about for Kansas City with 2019 health maps from the Kansas City Department of Health. Looking at demographics and health and lifestyle and education and economics and all these different things. And you can flip through them and just compare them side by side, which areas of town have the most or the least of whichever the topic is at hand. And there's some interesting correlations there. And that speaks to those legacies, those ongoing legacies of redlining, especially social determinants of health. The opportunities you have in your life shape you as much as your genetic code. And so if you grow up in an area with limited opportunities for education and access to healthcare and access to transportation and safe schools and access to lending and all these different things, good paying jobs, that really has an impact on you. And one of those maps hits especially hard. It compares life expectancy at birth in an area that was previously greenlined along Ward Parkway, that, the life expectancy at birth is 85 years. And the previously redlined area around 18th and Vine, that life expectancy at birth is 69 years on average. That's 16 years of life difference just based on where you were born, the history of that area, and the opportunities that you'll have. And sort of speaking to that, we produced a video speaking with folks from different communities that have been redlined. So somebody from the Quindaro area of KCK, somebody from the west side in Kansas City, and then somebody speaking for 18th and Vine area, and also 55th and Prospect, talking about the realities of their neighborhood. What do they love? Those areas are vibrant communities where people live today. We didn't want to reinforce this negative image of previously redlined communities. But also some real talk about what do those areas need? What do these folks hope for their community, and what policies would help them, would help those communities be more equitable to other communities and to thrive. So those other things punctuating the exhibit help break up the text, but also help you explore this topic in other ways.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. So as a historian and as a curator of the exhibition, are there any key lessons that you want us to take away from this exhibition?
Yeah, I think there are, well, I think there are many, but I think there are three that are worth mentioning. One, and this may or may not seem obvious, and I think this speaks to what Tim was saying when he didn't fully realize the history of redlining. That's the same for our staff. We knew, the basics, but we didn't realize just how deeply ingrained it is in society and the system, the framework that still exists. And so the idea that discrimination and disinvestment didn't end with the civil rights movement of the 1960s. It's continued. The system that was created around it, that framework, still exists and is shaping our communities and our realities today. And those legacies continue to impact our communities. I think that's a really important takeaway. And then secondly, there are reasons why our communities look the way they do. The built environment around us, why certain populations live in certain areas and other populations in other areas. There were plans and federal policies, and they shaped our reality and our built environment. It was intentional. It just didn't happen that way. I think thinking about that in this exhibit is important. And then lastly, something we realized as a staff is that the communities who were most impacted by redlining and continue to be impacted by redlining were never at the table when the policies were shaped, when the federal policy was implemented. The 35 years that it was in existence, they were not heard, and they were rarely at the table when there have been attempts to undo that system. And there have been attempts, unsuccessful, to fully remove redlining and its legacies from our communities. And so including those communities and listening to voices, more voices, having more people at the table when future policies are being made is really important. And can help us think about how we can make a more equitable future for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. So you said the exhibition is up for a year and it's already been open for a little while. How long until it closes? When is its closing date?
Yeah, January 7th, 2023 is our closing date. And we have quarterly free days. The next one is on June 11th. That's a great opportunity to see the exhibit. It's included in admission on regular days. So it's just one cost to get into the museum, $6 for adults, $5 for seniors, $4 for children. And you can find more information about the exhibit and our partnerships and our programs, and also find more resources if you go to jcprd.com/redlined. You can follow along on social media to the conversation that's happening with a hashtag redlinedKC. So lots of ways to engage in this besides going to the exhibit, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, I will say I have seen the exhibition, and it is probably one of the best I've seen in a while. And I just think it's a powerful topic. And Tim, I'm the same way. I didn't know much about redlining before, and over the past however long you guys have been working on redlining stuff in Kansas City. I feel like I've learned so much. And so thank you guys for the work that you've done and the work that your teams have done. And do either of you have anything else you want to add? I feel like we've covered a lot of great information.
This was fun.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I've spoken enough.
Sounds good. Well, I just want to say really quick for the people who are watching this, I just want to remind you this is our last creative conversation in this format. So stay tuned for future creative conversations in a different format, and we will release information about that later. So thank you, Tim, and thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day, and this was an amazing conversation.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Allison.
having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.